We're getting there. All right. So, not recording a whole class, just recording me going over the reading in case my voice dies on me. All right. Yeah. Down.
Oh, what?
Yeah, you have to have points. You don't have those. I was being nice letting you have. So, before we get to chapter 9, I have to do a quick rewind on chapters 7 and 8 because there's two big things that happen in 7 and 8. So, sorry, my remote's the one having issues. I've tracked it down. Apparently I need to replace it and get a new one because it's getting sassy in its old age. It just randomly hits buttons now. In chapter 7, the thing that happened was Mark getting revenge on Angela because the whole getting hit on the head with the bottle and him going to the hospital, but he can't go beat up a girl. So this is where instead she has the really long hair, so he goes and gets her drunk, cuts off all of her hair, and then throws her drunkenness and her hair into her parents' yard. They just drive up and throw them into the yard and just leave them there, which is not a good thing to do to anybody, let alone a drunken anybody, let alone a drunken anybody that you've shaved their head. So now she has super short hair, which took us to, and then we also, because this is going to play a role coming up, we find out that apparently they keep cigarettes underneath their mattresses in the beds, because Mark and Brian share a bedroom, because it used to be Brian's bedroom, but when Mark's parents killed each other and he moved in, they each have their own bed, and most kids apparently hide things underneath their mattress thinking their parents never looked there. They do the same thing, and they hide cigarettes underneath their bed, which is going to play a role coming up. Chapter 8, the big thing that happened here was revenge. They find out that apparently M has been staying at the hippie house. Mark said, I've been going to this hippie house a couple times. I have discovered that's where M is. Mark takes Brian to the hippie house, but it turns out M was not there when they went. They're like, he is staying here, he's just not currently here. And so because of that, M is not there. Then when he gets home, Brian is hanging out at his house, smoking, thinking about everything that's happened, when all of a sudden Angela's brothers show up, which would be Curly Shepherd and Tim Shepherd, the big thuggy gang members, and they show up and go, hey, last we heard you were hanging out with our sister and she had hair, and then she stopped hanging out with you and she doesn't have hair, so we're assuming you're responsible for this. Brian didn't do it, but much like how many of you guys say, I'm not a narc, he does the same thing. And he refuses to rat out Mark, who was the one who actually did it. So the brothers and their friends surround him and essentially beat the holy crap out of him, to the point where he is laying there in a twitching pile and has to get taken to the hospital. And they beat him to within an inch of his life, and so the revenge continues. But going all the way back to Mike and Connie and getting beat up by her brothers, when he was like, I understand not wanting to get revenge, Brian doesn't want to get revenge either. And he's like, that's it, I'm done with this. I got beat up for a thing, let's just end it. Mark goes, hey, let me go kill the shepherds. And he goes, no, do not kill the shepherds. Let it go, we're done. That brings us to chapter 9. Unfortunately, Mark is really unhappy because Mark wants to go get revenge, and Brian says, don't get revenge, but we're going to get to another big thing here today also. All right. The crying will be tomorrow.
What's the crime?
Crying. There we go. Today's just the M part, so I don't know if that'll be as cryy. Mata?
Are we taking the test after school?
So it depends on time. I mean, if we get done, it depends from one class to the next. Some classes tomorrow, we may say, who wants to have a discussion? And they just blink at me, and we'll go right into the test. Other classes, we may have more of a discussion, so it sort of depends. As soon as we finish discussion, I will open up tests for them. So we'll sort of go from there. Does that make sense? Okay. Chapter 9. All right, do my best. Come on, voice, don't fail me. Mark drove me to the hospital the next day. I got 15 stitches in my face and I had my ribs taped. As luck would have it, I got the same doctor that had sewed up Mark a few months before when he'd been busted with a bottle. He remembered Mark all right. I mean, most people did. He gave us a disgusted look and said, don't you punks ever do anything besides fight? Mark growled something real cute, but I couldn't get mad. I felt sick. I was ashamed of myself, even though I hadn't done anything. All I could think about was Mike's getting beat up for driving the black girl home. I kept remembering him saying he didn't hate the guys who did it. Well, I didn't hate the Shepherds either. I tried to explain that to Mark as we drove home. I was so wrapped up in what I was trying to get across to him that I was startled when Mark suddenly burst out, "What are you trying to do to me, Brian?" What? I said, confused. Mark had turned white and his voice was shaking as if he was about to cry. I couldn't believe it. I'd never seen Mark cry except from physical pain. "Man, how do you think I feel? You won't let me get the Shepherds for you. And here you go giving me this song and dance about how you don't feel bad about you getting beat up. You think I don't know? They beat you up for something I did. And here you are practically saying you had it coming when it was me who cut Angela's hair. It was me who planned it. Me who got her drunk. Me who did it. And it's you who gets beat up for it? Like that fool Mike. He feels like he had it coming. Feels guilty for something somebody else did. Man, that is sick. How do you think I felt finding you lying there in the yard? And I knew it was the Shepherds. If they killed you, that would have been my fault. That's eating me up, Brian, and you wouldn't even let me get even for you." He was crying. I just went sick inside. "Mark, man, it ain't your fault. It's just I'm sick of fighting. I'm sick of this circle of beating up people and getting beat up. It's stupid." I reached over and gave him an easy punch on the shoulder. "I ain't dead, man. There's nothing to worry about." Mark took a deep breath, and even though his voice was normal, he was gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles were white. "I don't know what's the matter with me. And I never worried about what if. I never did until me and Terry came home and found you lying there smashed up. Then I start thinking, what if? And look what happened to me. You don't want to get even with the Shepherds? That's your business." We just couldn't get through to each other. He didn't understand why I didn't dig fights anymore. I didn't understand how he could accept everything that came along without question, without wanting to at least change it. Mom nearly had a fit when she saw me. She was well by then, back at her job. I almost gave her a relapse. I'd never been so messed up. I mean, a black eye, she could take. Stitches in my lip, she could handle. Smashed ribs, she could do. But not all at the same time. I was feeling so lousy. I didn't mind her fussing at me. I pretended it was her who made me go to bed, but I was glad to be there. "You want me to go call Kathy?" Mark asked after I'd been put to bed. "Yeah, you mind?" He could get to a payphone, and I couldn't. "Sure, I mind. Beating up the Shepherds? That'd be easier. But for you, buddy, I'll do it." He gave me his famous Mark grin. I know she's going to be real glad to hear from me. I tried to grin back at him, but it was difficult. It's pretty lousy to have the two people you care most about hate each other. And I must have dozed off after Mark left. I felt pretty bad. The painkiller shots had worn off. I was running a fever. I don't know how long I was asleep, but when I came to, Kathy was sitting next to the bed. "Hi, Brian," she said, and her voice and her face were so serious that for a dazed second, I couldn't figure out if it was Kathy or Eminem. I really felt dizzy and drunk and confused. "How do you feel?" she asked when I couldn't say anything. I just lay there and looked at her stupid like. "Excuse me." "Oh, all right. I mean, I'm glad you're here." "Are you?" she said. She was crying. Well, there you go. I had both her and Mark crying within 24 hours. I must be really something. "Kathy, I'm really glad you're here. I love you." Okay, she sobbed. Then she reached over and held my hand. I took a quivering breath and looked at the ceiling. That hadn't been so hard after all. I could do that. Maybe there were a few other things I could take care of. "Well," Kathy said finally, "your mother says you'll be all right in a couple of days." You just look so awful, Brian." "You look great," I said. I mean, she didn't really, I guess, because you never do see a girl who looks good while she's crying, except in the movies. But to me, she did look good. "I'll be fine in a day or two. then we can go find Eminem. I got a lead on him. My mind was clearing up. Really? Like I hoped this took her mind off me for a little while. Like I hoped, but not much. Yeah. Mark says he's seen him at this hippie commune house thing. Kathy looked shocked. One of those, like, free love places? I don't think that's the right word for it. I couldn't help grinning. Anyway, he's been staying there. I went over to look for him yesterday. I think it was. I was still a little confused as to what day it was or even what time. He wasn't there then, but maybe we can find him. Don't worry, the place wasn't that bad. He could have been in a lot worse places. All right. She smiled at me like I knew everything on earth, like whatever I said went, and it really made me feel good. We'll go look for him when you get better. She reached over and gave me a quick, light kiss. Because of the stitches in my lip, this hurt, but not much. I took a couple of days sick leave from work. I didn't want to go to work looking like some prize fighter, but as soon as I was able, I took the car and went for a drive by myself. I've been thinking about a lot of things. Kathy, Mark, Eminem, Charlie. I drove around for 2 hours before I finally made up my mind. I drove out to the cemetery, the cheap cemetery. It's where people who don't have money get buried. I hadn't gone to Charlie's funeral, but I knew where he was buried. I finally found his grave. This was not easy since there wasn't much of a marker. There wasn't any big headstones in the whole place. I went, stood in front of his barren grave. No flowers, no nothing. Just the place where that was left of Charlie was laying. I said out loud, "Thanks for letting me use your car, Charlie. Thanks for saving my life." That wasn't hard to do. And I wished he'd done it when he could have heard me. I don't know. Maybe it was a dumb thing to do, but I sure felt better. I picked up Kathy 2 nights later. We went looking for Eminem. Mark had gone out somewhere. He was spending more and more time away from home. Mom was worried about him, I could tell, but by now she was also bugged about where he was getting the money he kept bringing home. And I still figured he was doing some serious poker playing, but I didn't want to tell Mom that, as she didn't have too high an opinion of poker or gambling in general. Me getting mixed up in that pool hustling business, I hadn't done much to glorify gambling either. "I just love your mother," Kathy said as we left the house. She and Mom were getting along pretty good. This was fine with me, as I dug her parents okay too. Right now, Kathy was hacked off at her old man. She blamed him for Eminem running away, but I don't know, I kind of like the guy. Most people do. She knows everybody within 20 miles of here. The mailman brings her all the stray kittens he finds, and the neighborhood grocer gives her free cat food. We were feeling real good driving to the hippie house. We laughed and kidded and horsed around all the way. I figured we had a pretty good chance of coming home with Eminem this time. There were 2 Volkswagen buses parked in the driveway of the old house. I knew they belonged to the hippies because of the flowers and slogans painted on them. One of them read, "War is unhealthy for children and other living things." Really bright. This is where he is? I still can hardly believe that baby's living in a place like this. I guess big sisters always think of little brothers as babies, no matter how old they are. Maybe it was good for him. Maybe being on his own made him grow up a little. I only half believed this. I'd always had a good opinion of Eminem's mind, but being smart ain't being mature, as I've often proved myself. Anyway, we can't be sure he even wants to come home with us. If he doesn't, Daddy's going to call the cops and have them bring him home. He doesn't want to, but he keeps saying Eminem has had his fling and it's time to come home. This is my only chance to get him home without dragging the police into it. I didn't know that. Well, let's hope he comes with us. Maybe I could just slug him and just carry him home? Kathy laughed. No, let the cops do it if it comes to that. I'd rather him hate the police than hate you. We walked up to the house. There were kids on the porch just watching the street. I stopped to talk with a biblical-looking guy. The reason he says he's biblical-looking is that there's this guy in the Bible named Jesus. He's got, like, you might have heard of him. I heard he has a fan club. He has, like, a big beard and like that. So the guy out front of the house has long hair and long beard and stuff like that.
So he's comparing him
No,
to
I'm Buddhist. So
No,
it's a
you've
whole
already
different
said
thing.
that.
So
Oh,
Sorry.
excuse you.
Thanks.
Bless yourself.
Just try not to cough into it.
Among us.
There we go. I'm looking for Baby Freak. And Baby Freak was the nickname the hippies gave to Eminem because he was young and he took drugs, so he would freak out. So Baby Freak. He around? I'm gonna do my best with my hippie voice, with my voice the way it is. Hang on. Yeah, man. Try it. Yeah, man. He is. The guy was staring directly into my eyes. He had friendly, trusting eyes. Are you like a friend of his? Yeah, I'm a good friend. This is his sister? Kathy gave him the big smile that she wanted me with. The guy smiled back. He's upstairs, I think. Suddenly the guy looked worried. He's been floating for a couple of days now. I'll explain the lingo in a moment. Oh, no kidding, I said, keeping my cool, and Kathy followed my example. You got to talk to his travel agent? He's the cat with the red hair inside. Travel agent? What's that? Kathy whispered as we went inside. I didn't want to tell her. I didn't want her to feel the sudden cold waves of fear that I was feeling. So I said, I don't know. Two things. When he says that he's been flying for a couple of days, means...
He's been high.
Yeah. So he's been really high, flying. They're not real witty. So the fact that he's been flying for not just high, but high nonstop for several days. Now, back in the 70s and 60s, when you took certain drugs like LSD, because what it does is mess with your perception, so the fact you hallucinate. So because of the hallucinations, it was said that you were taking a trip anytime that you did LSD. So the person that gave you the drugs so that you could go on a trip was called your travel agent, which was a witty way of saying drug dealer. So that's what a travel agent is. A travel agent gives you a thing so that you fly. So that's why he was like, you have to go talk to his travel agent. We found who we were looking for, a big, heavy guy with fire-colored hair, beard, and mustache. We're looking for Baby Freak, I said. I was beginning to see why Eminem had acquired this other nickname. Most of the kids there were at least 17 or 18, and a lot of them were college-age kids. It was a real crowded place. But now, I can't remember what everyone was doing. At least some of the kids were smoking grass. I mean, you can tell that by the smell. And I was hoping the place didn't get raided while we were there. You can get busted just for being at a place where people are smoking pot. Yeah, Red said. Man, that kid's on a bad trip. Kathy made a funny yelping little sound. Some of these freaks have been dropping acid. Baby wanted to try it, so I sat with them. Bad trip, man. Really bad. He calmed down a little now, but all day today, me and some of these other cats been holding him and keeping him from jumping out the window. I felt like I was going to throw up. Kathy was as white as a sheet. Can we see him? She said in a tiny voice. Yeah, sure. We followed him up the stairs, and he led us to the same room Mark and I had gone to the last time we were there. This time, no one was there except the blonde chick, who was curled up on the bed asleep, and someone huddled in the corner. To my surprise, Red walked over to the huddle. Hey, man, there's people here to see you. Are they spiders? The person didn't raise his head, but the voice was Eminem's. Nah, man, they're squares. Yeah. Squares is more lingo. It means that you don't do drugs. If you are square, it was thought that you are not cool, and so if you're not cool, you are square. So that's the square means that you're a non-drug doer
The
person.
reason why he's talking
Yeah. Usually, yeah. They're just more relaxed. I don't know. It's probably a stereotype, but it works for the book. So they're squares. Eminem looked up, and I hardly recognized him. His hair was to his shoulders, and he was a lot thinner. He was dirty, and the expression on his face was what I'd never seen on him before. Suspicion. Eminem, baby, it's me, Kathy. Kathy kneeled down in front of him. He was staring at her, not seeing her. Square spiders? I don't want to see any spiders. No, it's me, Kathy, your sister. Don't you want to go home? I went to my stomach. He was talking too fast. I went down into my stomach and all these spiders came out, and I never knew there were spiders in my stomach, and I was there 10 years, and all that time these spiders kept chewing on me, and they were big spiders. Kathy choked back a sob. Baby, what have you done to yourself? She said in a whisper. He seemed to finally see her. Kathy? Oh, I screamed and screamed and screamed, but nobody came to help me. I kept trying to get back, but the spiders held me down. They held me down and chewed on me, and the colors went in and out, and I listened to the colors, and they were screaming too. Red and yellow screamed loudest. The spiders were eating them too. Yeah, man. He kept, trying to jump out the window, all day. So we took turns holding him down. What did the guy want? A medal? He had given him the stuff in the first place. Kathy, we should take him to the hospital. She looked at me quickly. Hospital? Yeah, let me call Daddy first. Do you have a phone I can use? And she followed Red out of the room. There was this other color, Eminem said to me seriously, but half afraid. I don't know its name, but it told me, but I forgot. It said I was being paid back for all the carrots I ate. I didn't know. I thought I didn't know about the carrots before. I don't think it was my fault. He was crying, and tears were pouring down his face, but he hadn't changed his expression. He looked so thin and scared, not a bit like the Eminem I knew. Do you think I should be paid back for something I didn't know about? No, I don't think it was your fault. I put my arm around him and held him. Kathy came back. Daddy's going to meet us at the hospital. Can you carry him? Yeah. I picked him up easily. He couldn't have weighed more than 90 pounds. I'm so tired, Eminem said. I was gone so long and I didn't have any sleep. I carried him down outside and nobody made any move to stop me. Nobody seemed to care. Kathy drove us to the hospital. Halfway there, Eminem started suddenly and screamed, Where am I? That's okay, kid. You're going to be okay. Where am I? Why don't I know where I am? I was just sick. I don't know how Kathy was managing to drive the car. I'd never felt so bad before. I just held on to Eminem. There wasn't any sense in trying to talk to him. I felt then that he was as much my little brother as Kathy's. Mr. Carlson was waiting for us at the hospital. We drove right up to the emergency entrance. There he was. I got out, picked Eminem up again, but didn't have him for long. Mr. Carlson took him and carried him into the hospital, holding him very close and very tight. Eminem was telling him all about the spiders. Chapter 10's on 142, but the end of the book's 158, so there's only 15 pages left. Tomorrow, I will not be able to read the whole end. I'm only going to read a couple small parts to you, and then we'll talk.